cultural um, device.
Well, can I add something? Because I kind of feel like it's more of a amalgamation of different cultures. Like I hear these conversations and it starts arguments. I'm like, we're all Africans and you're having an American version. You as an African in America are having a African experience within America versus the person who may be in the Caribbean is an African having a Caribbean experience versus the person who's in the continent. At the end of the day, the central core is Africa. And in musical styles, we've always had like a call and response, because if you go back even in the 60s, you have African artists who were influenced by Latin America. Then they created their own sound, and it's almost like a back and forth. So when I see we get into these conversations, and of course, America is the base, and the Bronx and that whole history, but to say that like Puerto Ricans also were part of the hip hop with breakdancing. You also had Caribbeans. Of course, you had also foundational Americans who collaboratively created something beautiful. So sometimes when we approach these conversations, to me, we approach it from a nationalistic sense, and sometimes I feel like we need to draw away from that and focus on our commonality as Africans. Towards the music.
100%. And
And
yes,
it's not
you're
to take away
absolutely
from
right. The
African
African
Americans.
drum is what does streamline the sounds, and it does the African drum that resides in the ear of every African person, every African blooded person. That is what connects us as far as the music is concerned. Like, we know them 808s are coming from the African drums. We know that those heavy basses and jazz are coming from those drums. Like, we know that much. We know that the spirit of the music is coming from our ancestors. We're very aware of that. But just as I was saying earlier, is that every country has their own individual cultures, right? Like, you're not going to hear a Black American say that they contributed to the creation of soca music, because that's not a true statement. You know what I'm saying?
But they've
But what
contributed
is
towards.
true.
But they have contributed
Sorry,
towards
sweetie, I didn't
reggae.
interrupt you. I didn't
Oh,
interrupt you,
sorry.
sweetie. All due respect, right? But just when we're talking about hip hop, because this is a very sensitive issue, especially here on TikTok, and I'm trying to help y'all not get dragged by the foundational Black Americans and the people that take offense when people who are quote unquote immigrants come into America and try to step on the Americans' toes. Like, there's a whole narrative right now on TikTok that you will hear if you are not giving credit where credit is due. Yes, I am aware that there are people who came from other countries that were in New York at the time hip hop was created, but it is a Black American device. We have to give our Black American brothers and sisters the credit where it's due, because so many people around the world talk about Black American not having any culture. Now, mind you, Black American culture is far more than hip hop. Way more than hip hop. Let us be clear. It is way more than hip hop, but there is a certain level of credit we have to give to Black American culture for the explosion that hip hop was and how it took the entire world by storm. Now it's been colonized. Hip hop has been colonized in 2023. Let us be clear. Hip hop is not what it used to be in the 80s and 90s. It's not. So it's been colonized. But prior to its colonization, hip hop was something that Black Americans could take pride in, because it's something that came out of Black America. And I digress.
I feel like Jack Harlow adds his color.
Hop in real quick with the hip hop conversation. I say this because it's necessary for us to understand our future from a power dynamic standpoint. Okay. Hip hop took the world by storm. Nobody can deny that. Through what medium do we all agree? Through what medium did hip hop take the world by? Like, in what way were people experience the music of hip hop? How was that possible? Was it through
With the sound system?
Sound system, sure. So like concerts, right? That was one way. What was another way?
It was cassettes and mostly CDs.
8-track cassettes.
Yeah.
CDs.
Radio.
The
TV, right?
boombox. Radio Raheem.
They bringing back the boom box.
Radios, media, right? Now let me ask you something. When, if ever, or do black people own media?
No.
Right. So the fact is, black people had a monopoly on hip hop, correct? But we know that black people never had a monopoly on media. Now we don't got to go down a rabbit hole on who has a rabbit hole on media, but the reality is for us to be honest with ourselves that without any media, there is no world knowing about hip hop. And this speaks to the importance of infrastructure when it comes to building something of your own. Because I love the fact that we were able to have a monopoly on hip hop. But if I love that, I have to accept the fact that we didn't have a monopoly on media, and the world could not have known about hip hop if there was no media.
That's true.
Okay, so now again, some of us we will ride that hip hop thing into people's face, not acknowledging or not understanding what I just said. You see, so it still speaks to what the brother We Are Morris is talking about, is that even in the things we take pride in, we don't even acknowledge the other half of how it really got to the rest of the world. You see, and that sets us up to say, okay, when we want to have control, or when we want to be truly proud of something through and through, we won't need anybody else controlling we are able to deliver our creativity and our beauty. And that's fair.
That's true. Wait, I had wanted to add, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. My point was, I wasn't taking away from foundational blacks. I was just saying that if you have reggae artists who also acknowledge the influence of black music to Caribbean music, specifically Jamaica, but that doesn't take away from, by you acknowledging that, it doesn't take away from the greatness of the contributions of Jamaica. But you have Bob Marley, all those people, they were listening to the sounds of Black America in the 50s and 60s. That was what I was going to add. So there is a strong Caribbean influence in hip hop by virtue of people just living in New York. New York is a city of all types of folks. But of course, like, I always like to big up Marley Marl. Changed hip hop, right? Even you may have Caribbeans or people from but he basically invented sampling. So I can't imagine what rap music would be today if Marley Marl did not invent sampling. And that always just, I don't know. No, I mean, there's no amount of money that he could be paid, or people cannot thank him enough for that contribution to hip hop. Because what would hip hop be without sampling?
That is true. He played a very influential role, as did a few of the rappers that were in the 80s and 90s.
Hey, brother, we are to say I appreciate you for giving the advice about putting the information on the screen, because lately I was like, man, I feel like me teaching is not hitting like I wanted to hit. And what you said, are people not reading like that? I totally agree. I totally agree, and I'm not saying that for like in a just erroneous way. But I see myself in my content, and when you see someone just their face and you don't pay attention, that really hit, and not in like a offensive way, but in an effective way, because I want to be effective in teaching our people.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here. I just did a 3-hour live reading out of this one book that was just.
I've been watching you. You don't even be responding to me in the comments. I be watching you live.
Man, on my lives, I be channeling, and I don't even be. I be in a different.
I'm the same way. Especially when the ancestors be hitting me, bro, and I get the ancestral Holy Ghost, and I start lecturing.
Bro, I don't know how. I gotta learn how to regulate better. But what I was gonna say, but you definitely just put me on about the information, the video, the caption, because that's what I really needed. So I appreciate you for that. And I was gonna ask about you traveling to South America and seeing the influence, any African influence, but then you you posted that video, and then I went to your page and I saw the other brother with the ponytail, and he talked about he knew about African people building, and so I'm like, okay, so. Cause my chronology about our influence in South America wasn't, I wasn't aligned like that until I just watched these two videos. But of course, I still got to do my own research.
You got do you have They Came Before Columbus? Do you have that?
I don't have that yet. Nope.
Get that.
Fire.
Get Runoko Rashidi book, and in those two books, so in Runoko Rashidi's books and Ivan Van Sertima's books, they also reference other historians that aren't Black from those regions and have expertise in those regions as well. You can check those out.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
That actually align with telling the truth. Because there's a lot of people in Mexico that, as you know, I think you know this, Mexico tried to hide the Olmec heads and hide all of our ancient artifacts. And Ivan Van Sertima talks about, I think the man passed away, but it's an old white German man that has a lot of African artifacts, and they were trying to preserve it because the Mexican or the South American government was basically trying to hide it. So you get a lot of insight in those.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that. And I find it interesting, and I'll land with this. I'm gonna, wrap up my night. But I find it interesting that those of us that have done the most research, we go pretty far back into history. Like yourself, like Anthony brought. Like I'm like, yo, I'm noticing something with all these conversations. Folks saying they reading all this and they seeing all this, but I'm noticing something about the Dr. Benz and Anthony Brawlers and D. I'm noticing that not only are these people like libraries, right, in terms of the amount of books that they read, but they typically tend to go way back in the origins and in a particular area and expand upon that. And people be like, oh, we hyper fixate on Egypt. We hyper fixate on East Coast. We don't know nothing about Central Africa. We don't know nothing. I'm like, is it that, or did they already pass that up and you haven't done your research to like see the chronological order of
not
things.
reading no books and be having the nerve to come and call somebody and say they can debunk this, they can debunk that, but ain't no books, all modern day shit. And then that's the part that killed me the most. I always say that too. People say that they don't follow colonizers or we're colonized or some shit, but then they'll come with some Google facts. Like you saw the history the two examples I always give. If you're a Google scholar, if you're a Google lover, Google the word Kwama.